Hello everyone, my name is Jayshal Marshika Laurente from STEM Malakay, and this will be my video tutorial for Statistics and Probability. Our topic for today is Hypothesis Test. The hypothesis test is a proposed explanation, assertion, or assumption about a population parameter or about the distribution of a random variable. A parameter is characteristic of the population like its mean or variance. Testing a hypothesis is an assumption about the population parameter, which is to be tested. For what we collect sample data, then we can calculate sample statistics and then use this information to judge or decide whether hypothesized value of population parameter is correct or not. Have you at a certain time wondered if a judge in a trial could have been wrong decisions in determining who's guilty? Or think if your classmates' average weights differ significantly among your age? Or imagine how a newly discovered medicine is being tested for human treatment. And this lesson will help you sound decision in dealing with these situations. Null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is an initial claim that states the assumption to be tested. Example, the average height of grade 12 student is 58 inches, so the population mean is equals to 58. It begins with the assumption that null hypothesis is true. Next. Alternative hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is contrary to the null hypothesis, which shows that observations are the result or real effect. Example, the average height of grade 12 student is not 58 inches, so the population mean is not equal to 58. Here we have the mathematical symbol used for null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. For the null hypothesis, if it is equal, the alternative hypothesis is not equal or greater than or less than. If the null hypothesis is greater than or equal to, then the alternative hypothesis is less than. If the null hypothesis is less than or equal to, then the alternative hypothesis is greater than. Examples. 1. The average daily usage of social media of high school students is 142 minutes per day. So the population mean is equals to 142 minutes per day. While the alternative hypothesis, the average daily usage of social media of high school students is not 142 minutes per day, which means the population mean is not equal to 142 minutes per day. Next, we have the null hypothesis. It takes less than 2 hours to answer the quarterly exam in calculus. So the population mean is less than or equal to 2 hours. While the alternative hypothesis, it takes more than 2 hours to answer the quarterly exam in calculus, which means the population mean is greater than 2 hours. Okay, last example. A medical trial is conducted to test whether or not a new medicine reduces uric acid by 50%. So the null hypothesis is the new medicine can reduce uric acid by 50%, so the population mean is equal to 50%. While the alternative hypothesis, the new medicine cannot reduce uric acid by 50%. So the population mean is not equal to 50%. Type 1 and Type 2 errors. When a statistical hypothesis is tested, there are 4 possible results. The first one is hypothesis is true but our test accepts it. Second, the hypothesis is false but our test rejects it. Third, the hypothesis is true but our test rejects it. And lastly, the fourth one, the hypothesis is false but our test accepts it. Obviously, the last 2 possibilities lead to errors. First, rejecting a null hypothesis is when it is true is called a type 1 error. Second is accepting a null hypothesis when it is false is called type 2 error. Adding fluoride to toothpaste protects against cavities. At the start of a procedure, there are 2 hypotheses. The first one is no effect is tested, and second is adding fluoride is actually effective against cavities. The first one is called the null hypothesis, and the second one is called the alternative hypothesis. Here are the graph for the example number 1. The null hypothesis is true, there is no effect. But to accept the null hypothesis, this is the right decision. While to reject null hypothesis, it is a wrong decision, type 1 error. While the alternative hypothesis is true, it is effective. The accept null hypothesis, it is a wrong decision, type 2 error. The reject null hypothesis, it is a right decision. Example number 2, a resort owner does a daily water quality test in their swimming pool. If the level of it is too high, then he probably temporarily closed the pool to perform a water treatment. Type 1 error is the owner closes the pool when it does not need to be closed. Type 2 error is the owner does not close the pool when it is need to be closed. So it means in terms of safety, type 2 error has more dangerous consequences. One-tailed and two-tailed test. Two-tailed test is that where the hypothesis about the population parameter is rejected for the value of sample statistic failing into either tail of a distribution. When the hypothesis about population parameter is rejected for the value of sample statistic failing into one side tail of the distribution, then it is known as one-tailed test. This is the two-tailed test. And then on the other hand, if the rejection area falls on the right side, then it is called left-tailed test. Here. If the rejection area falls on the right side, then it is called right-tailed test. Now for the summary of one and two-tailed test. Here we have the one-tailed test for the left tail, the two-tailed test, and the one-tailed test for the right tail. Next, procedure of hypothesis testing. Step 1, set up a hypothesis. Step 2, set up a sustainable significance level. Step 3, determination of sustainable test statistic. Step 4, determine the critical value from the table. Step 5, after doing computation, check the sample result. And step 6, make decisions. That's all for my video tutorial. Thank you so much for listening.